The sun rose over Lagos, painting the city in gold and smoke. The air pulsed with life, the rumble of buses, the cries of market women, the smell of roasted corn mixing with dust. Lagos never slept. It only shifted between dreams and noise. But beneath the laughter and horns, something else moved, soft as breath, cold as shadow. Old men sitting before roadside kiosks shook their heads as they watched the day begin. "This city," one muttered, spitting to the side, "it carries too many secrets." Another nodded slowly. The elders were right. The living and the dead, they walked the same roads here. A wind slithered through the alleys, stirring plastic bags and old prayers. The shadows stretched too long against the light, and nobody dared to ask why. That same morning, Amara arrived. She came with one suitcase and eyes that seemed to hold the silence of graves. Her face was calm, almost too calm, the kind that makes even the boldest heart uneasy. She rented a small room near the market, where the air was thick with pepper, smoke, and gossip. "New girl from the village," the women whispered as they pounded yam and sold tomatoes. "Quiet like midnight, that one," Amara said little. She walked softly, cooked alone, and never joined in laughter. Her neighbors noticed strange things. The room she rented was always cool, even when the city burned with heat. And sometimes when she smiled, the birds on the power lines took flight, as though something unseen had brushed their wings. At night, her window glowed faintly, though no lamp was lit. Children passing by held their mother's hands tighter. Across the city, Chiki adjusted his golden wristwatch and smiled at his reflection in the car window. To the world, he was everything a man should be: handsome, confident, and successful. He worked in real estate, made money flow like palm wine, and spoke with the ease of someone who believed in his own charm. But behind the golden smile, his shadow told another story. When night fell, Chiki knelt before a shrine hidden in his apartment, a clay idol with hollow eyes. He whispered promises in a trembling voice. "Give me power. Give me wealth. I will do what must be done." The candlelight danced and the idol seemed to listen. He did not sleep easily. In his dreams, blood shimmered like red water, and voices called his name from the darkness. He would wake with sweat on his brow, muttering prayers that sounded more like bargains. Far away, in the old quarter, where the city's noise turned into whispers, Mama Ifeoma stirred in her sleep. The night had brought her a vision, sharp, cold, and heavy like rain before a storm. She rose slowly, her old bones cracking, and reached for her cowrie-studded staff. Before her shrine of burning herbs and carved ancestors, she lit a single candle and spoke in the tongue of her foremothers. "The spirits have spoken," she murmured. "Two souls, one born of greed, the other of grief. Bound by deceit and death." The flame flickered wildly, throwing shadows that looked like faces, crying, pleading, warning. Mama Ifeoma closed her eyes. "The city eats its children," she whispered, "and the gods are hungry again." She did not yet know their names, Amara and Chike, but the air around her shifted, thick with destiny. Somewhere, far away, a dog howled, and a crow took flight into the red dawn. And in that moment, the gods began to move. The rain had just fallen over Lagos, washing dust from the roads and heat from the air. Vendors hurried to cover their stalls, and the scent of wet earth filled the crowded street. Amid the noise of rushing feet and dripping roofs, Amara stepped carefully, her woven bag clutched close to her chest. Then, splash. A passing taxi drove through a puddle, and the wave of muddy water struck her skirt. She gasped softly, bending to gather her fallen bag. When another hand reached for it at the same time, their fingers touched. The man smiled. Cheek? His white shirt damp, his golden wristwatch catching the last light of the gray sky. "Forgive me," he said quickly, handing her the bag. "Lagos rain has no mercy." Amara looked at him, her face calm but unreadable. "Rain only falls where it must," she said quietly. Cheek laughed, though the sound trembled slightly. Her skin was cold. Not the kind of cold that came from rain, but the cold that made the heart flinch. For a moment he couldn't speak. Then he shook it off with another charming grin. "Maybe the gods arranged this meeting," he said lightly. Amara's eyes lifted to his, dark and deep like a forgotten well. "The gods do not play," she murmured. He watched her walk away into the thinning rain, her steps silent, her figure fading into the mist. But something about her drew him, not just beauty but mystery. He could feel it. Fate had just stirred, and somewhere high above, among the clouds where unseen eyes watched, the gods whispered to one another, "So it begins." The next days were filled with pursuit. Cheeky brought flowers, gold earrings, and soft-spoken promises. His charm was like honey, sweet, smooth, and deadly. Amara, lonely in the strange city, began to soften. She saw in him the kindness she missed from her village. When he smiled, it felt like sunlight after a long storm. But behind that smile, darkness waited. In a candle-lit room far from her sight, Cheek knelt before the shrine of his cult. Around him, masked figures chanted, their voices low and hungry. "Find the one whose blood is clean," the eldest said. "Bind her before the blood moon rises. Only then will the gods of wealth open their hands to you." Cheek bowed deeply. "I have found her," he said. Pure, gentle, unguarded. When he returned to Amara, his voice was softer, his eyes warmer. "You are the one I've prayed for," he told her. "Marry me," Amara hesitated. "So soon?" she whispered. He took her hand, smiling. "When a man sees his destiny, should he wait?" And she agreed, because the heart does not see what the spirit hides. Their wedding was small but filled with unease. Neighbors whispered that the bride's dress shimmered oddly in the sun, like water hiding something beneath. And as Cheeky slipped the ring onto her cold finger, thunder cracked across a clear sky. Mama Ifeoma, watching from afar, bowed her head. "The gods do not bless this union," she said softly. "They only wait to collect their due." Days turned into weeks, and the city began to change. Lights flickered when Amara entered a room. Mirrors clouded when she passed. The wind moaned through cracks in the walls, though the night was still. At the market, an old woman caught Cheek's sleeve. Her eyes were sharp and wild. "Your wife carries the scent of the grave," she hissed. "Return her before the moon sees her shadow." Cheeky pulled away, forcing a laugh. "Old tales," he said. "Superstitions." But when he walked home, the dogs barked endlessly. Children began to cry when Amara smiled at them. And sometimes, at night, he would wake to find her standing by the window, staring at the moon, whispering names he did not know. Still, Cheek ignored it all. The call of wealth rang louder than the whispers of fear. He told himself the signs were nothing, though every candle that flickered, every chill that crept under the door told another story. That same night, Mama Ifeoma prayed before her altar, her hands trembling. "The air grows heavy," she whispered. "Destiny is moving again. Spirits are waking." On their wedding night, the moon hid behind clouds, turning the city into a pale sea of shadows. Amara slept uneasily, her breath shallow. In her dream, drums echoed, slow, deep, and mournful. She stood by a river that ran red like sunset, voices calling her name from the other side. Cheek tossed in his sleep. His dream was fire and chanting, his cult brothers standing in a circle calling for blood. And there, at the center of the altar, stood Amara, smiling faintly, her eyes glowing like distant stars. When he woke, his heart was pounding. Amara turned beside him, her face calm, and whispered, "You cannot run from what you have already chosen." He stared at her in silence, too afraid to ask if she was dreaming too, or remembering. Far away, the forgotten gods stirred in their dark places, their whispers curling through the night like smoke. And thus began the tale of love and death, a story whispered by firelight, where even the wind listens, and no one truly knows who among them still belongs to the living. The wedding ended under a sky still heavy with clouds, the drums sounding but strangely hollow. Guests whispered quietly among themselves, offering blessings with hands pressed to chests, yet no one danced. The kola nut split unevenly before the elders, a subtle crack that spoke of imbalance. Amara smiled faintly, graceful as always, but when she turned, her shadow lagged, hesitant, as if unsure it should follow her. Cheeky shivered, brushing a hand across his neck. "It's just the night," he muttered to himself, though the chill clung stubbornly. They walked home through Lagos streets glowing with scattered lights. The neon shimmer faltered as if the city itself held its breath. Somewhere above, unseen eyes watched. The spirits whispered and stirred, marking the living who dared to ignore the unseen. Cheeky held Amara's hand tighter, trying to convince himself he felt warmth, but he felt only a faint, unnatural cold that refused to leave his palm. Days passed, and a message appeared carved in ash on Cheek's doorstep. He knelt to read the words, "When the blood moon rises, she must fall." That night, in a forgotten warehouse, the cult elders gathered around flickering lamps. Shadows danced across their faces, masks of ambition and hunger. "You promised," the eldest said, voice sharp as the edge of a machete. "Her blood will open the doors we have long awaited. Delay? And your life belongs to us instead." Cheeky bowed his head, murmuring, "I understand," though his throat was tight with fear. He could not forget Amara's eyes. Dark, deep, knowing, eyes that seemed to pierce through his greed, into the part of him he wished the gods would never see. Their home began to breathe differently. Lights flickered when Amara entered a room, mirrors fogged without reason, and the walls whispered in voices he could not place. At night she hummed lullabies from her village, songs no one had taught her, songs of home and memory. Chike noticed the unease growing. She never ate. Food cooled before her fingers touched it. Sometimes she slept lightly, murmuring in the voices of men, women, and children long gone. Once, he awoke to see her at the window framed by moonlight, whispering softly, "I am home." He felt a chill creep through his chest. Home? He thought. Had she truly left the grave from which she came? One night, the city fell into darkness. A blackout swallowed their house, leaving only shadows and the smell of rain-slick streets creeping through open windows. Cheeky lit a candle, the small flame shaking in his hand. He froze. Amara stood near him, but behind her there were two shadows. One moved with her, bending naturally. The other lagged, twitching, unnerving in its imitation. Chike blinked, heart hammering. Both shadows turned to face him, elongated faces dark and accusatory. The candle sputtered and died. Silence fell heavy, pressing against his ears. Then, soft and low, a voice murmured his name. Chike. He could not tell if it came from her lips, from the walls, or from somewhere far deeper, where the living and the dead meet. His hands shook. His heart screamed. And in that darkness he understood. The game he thought he controlled had already begun without his consent. The morning sun was weak, a pale light creeping through the cracks of Chika's apartment. He pored over the papers on their small dining table, trying to distract himself from the cold fear that had lodged in his chest. Files, receipts, and forms, all mundane, all safe, until his eyes fell on the marriage certificate. He froze. The document was already dated 1 year ago, and the signature, it was Amara's but not in ink. It was written in dried blood, dark and glossy. He reached out, trembling, and as his fingers brushed the page, the red seemed to writhe, moving as if alive. Chike yanked his hand back, the smell of iron sharp in his nostrils. A single drop fell, staining his palm. He scrubbed it, yet the metallic cold lingered, clawing at his senses. He hid the certificate beneath old clothes, but he could not hide it from himself. The fear was no longer only of Amara. It was of the man he had become, the one who had chosen this path. In the courtyard, whispers crawled through the compound like smoke. "She walks at midnight," a neighbor said, voice low and shaking. "I saw her in white, though her door was locked." Another leaned in, eyes wide. "And I saw her reflection in my window. She wasn't there." Rumors grew fast, twisting through the walls and alleyways. Cheeky's bride, they said, was an abiku, a spirit child, returned from death to haunt the living. When he confronted them, their eyes dropped. Fear had already written the story for him. He left the courtyard, carrying not anger, but dread heavy as stone. Desperate for answers, Cheek took the long road east to Amara's village. Dust rose behind the car wheels, and the horizon shimmered with heat and memory. Villagers hushed as he approached, crossing themselves when he asked for her name. Finally, an old clerk, trembling, spoke. She died 2 years ago. On the road to Lagos, car overturned. No body was found. Coffin buried empty. Chike's knees gave way. He staggered to her family's compound, eyes fixed on the photograph framed by a candle that never seemed to burn down. The air was thick with incense and silence. As he turned to leave, a small voice called from the shadows. "Uncle, the dead woman said you would come." The earth beneath him shivered. A drumbeat echoed faintly, far away, calling him back to Lagos. His heart raced, and he fled, the city waiting like a predator behind him. Back home, Cheeky barricaded himself in his apartment. Sweat ran down his temples as he stared at the walls, haunted by the memory of Amara's eyes, the whispering candle flame, and the drumbeat still pounding in his mind. The phone rang. A masked voice hissed through the receiver. "If you fail, your blood will seal the debt." Chike dropped the phone. He sank to the floor, trembling, torn between greed, guilt, and fear. He muttered prayers to gods he barely believed in, begging forgiveness that would not come. In the mirror, his reflection smiled at him, cruel, knowing, alive, even when he did not. He rose shakily to his feet. Escape seemed impossible. The house, the city, and even the dead were all watching. And yet, somewhere deep in his chest, a single stubborn thought refused to die. I must survive, even if it costs everything. Amara sat by the window, the warm Lagos evening fading into shadow. Children's laughter floated through the streets, high and innocent, and her face tightened with a sorrow she could not name. Her hand clenched her skirt as if holding on to something slipping beyond reach. From afar, the faint beat of drums began, distant but growing, steady and relentless. She froze, trembling. Her mind flickered with half-formed memories. A scream, screeching tires, the moment she fell into darkness. She touched the cold metal of her wedding ring. "Why can't I wake up?" she whispered, voice thin as mist. In the mirror, her reflection shimmered, then vanished, leaving only the hollow light of the room. Tears traced down her cheeks but evaporated before they could touch her skin. Something stirred inside her, a soul suspended between two worlds, bound by a life she could no longer fully remember, yet a peace she instinctively sought. Outside, the moon climbed higher, turning red as if soaked in warning. Cheek's hands shook as he packed the ritual knife, the steel glinting in dim lamplight. He stole glances at Amara, sleeping beside him, serene, distant, unknowable. A chant echoed in his mind, harsh and relentless. The innocent must die for the greedy to rise. But then a whisper slipped into the edge of his awareness, soft and tremulous. You cannot kill what is already gone. Chike paled, his grip faltering. Was it her voice or the voice of something older, unseen? Outside, the wind whipped through the streets, howling like lost souls desperate to be heard. The city held its breath. The spirits were awake. The night of sacrifice was coming, but the gods already knew the truth. Lagos lay under the blood moon, its usual clamor stilled. Even the winds paused. Stray dogs howled into empty streets. Old women closed their shutters, whispering prayers that curled like smoke against unseen shadows. Leaves quivered in alleys, carrying the presence of ancestors, unseen, but undeniable. The city itself seemed to pulse with anticipation. Tonight was not ordinary. Tonight, debts between the living and the dead were to be paid. The city held its breath, waiting, watching, as fates hung by threads of moonlight and shadow. Cheek drove through the deserted streets, his heart hammering. Beside him, Amara's eyes reflected the blood-red moon, calm and inscrutable. The streetlights dimmed as if bowing to something greater than the city, greater than himself. The car came to a stop before an abandoned colonial mansion, its cracked walls and decaying pillars whispering of forgotten times. Inside, masked cult members circled, torches flickering, firelight dancing over silent faces. The cult leader's voice cut through the still air. "Tonight, the gods will feast," Amara stepped forward, her movements steady, deliberate, as if she already knew what awaited her. Cheek's chest tightened. Was she unaware or was she pretending? The shadows inside the mansion seemed to lean forward, expectant. And somewhere, deep in the night, the city watched, waiting for what was to come. The chanting rose, low and ancient, carrying a language older than the city itself. Flames licked the ground in a perfect circle, crackling and twisting as if alive, forming a barrier of fire around Amara. Shadows danced in the flickering light, stretching and bending like spirits eager to witness the night's events. Chike's hands trembled as he gripped the blackened knife, its surface streaked with the dried blood of those who had come before. Sweat ran down his temples, mingling with the acrid scent of burning incense and fear. The cult leader leaned close, voice sharp. "Do not hesitate. The gods despise weakness." Cheeky swallowed hard, eyes darting to Amara. She stood calm, sorrowful, a quiet knowing in her gaze that pierced his chest. Her lips did not move, yet a chill ran down his spine. In that silence, he understood. He was no longer the master of this moment. The air itself seemed to pulse with the power of unseen eyes. Chike raised the blade, hands shaking so violently the steel rattled. His breath came in shallow gasps. As the tip touched Amara's skin, the ground beneath the mansion trembled. Candles exploded into sparks, scattering shards of light that danced like fireflies caught in a storm. A wind, cold and bitter, surged through the room, snuffing out every flame. The cult froze, eyes wide in terror. Then a voice, neither near nor far, whispered sharp as thunder, "You cannot sacrifice what death already owns." Symbols etched into the walls glowed with an eerie blue light, pulsing like a heartbeat. The cries of ancestors filled the air, rising over the frantic whispers of the cult. Cheek's knees buckled. The knife fell from his fingers, clattering to the stone floor, useless, empty, abandoned. Empty, abandoned. When the smoke and sparks cleared, Amara stood at the center of the circle, transformed. Her skin shimmered pale silver, faintly luminous as though carved from moonlight. Her eyes blazed like twin moons, carrying the weight of ancestors and the sorrow of centuries. The cult members fell to their knees, screaming, clutching at the shadows that now erupted from the ground. Black forms rose, clawing and twisting, dragging them into the yawning earth. One by one, their cries faded into the deep silence of judgment. Chike stood frozen, unable to move, staring at the woman he had intended to destroy. She stepped forward, calm, yet terrible, her voice breaking through the chaos. "You played with blood that was never yours to spill." Each word reverberated through the room, heavy with grief, fury, and the echoes of forgotten graves. In that moment, Amara's memories returned like a storm. The screeching tires, the twisted metal, the pain that had stolen her life, all came flooding back. She saw the emblem on the car that had ended her days. She remembered the faces of men laughing in the dark, offering her to forces she had never understood. Her gaze settled on Cheeky. Recognition sparked like lightning. He stumbled backward, bowing, voice trembling. "It was not my choice. They made me..." But the ancestors would not accept lies. The air thickened with silent judgment, pressing down on the living, reminding them that truth and justice are older than fear. Amara's tears fell, glowing as they struck the floor, radiant yet sorrowful, tears not for revenge, but for the weight of lives betrayed and the spirits still waiting for release. The circle of fire burned no longer, but the memory of its judgment, and the presence of the dead among the living, remained. Amara stepped forward and the air seemed to freeze around her. Every breath Chaik drew felt heavy, as if the space itself mourned his ambition. Her hand rested on his chest, cold as stone, yet firm, carrying the weight of justice and the calm of centuries. The ritual symbols on the floor pulsed once, then reversed their glow, crawling like living fire against him. Chaik's eyes widened in terror. "No, this can't," he whispered, voice breaking. His heartbeat slowed unnaturally as his shadow burned, curling and twisting into ash beneath his feet. "You sought life through death," Amara murmured softly, her voice both gentle and unyielding. "Now death shall live through you." Around him, the spirits encircled, their chants rising and falling in rhythm, mocking his fear. Flames erupted under his feet, licking the floorboards, and his scream joined the wails of the damned. The ancestors reclaimed what was theirs, and silence fell like a heavy cloth, smothering the cries of the living. The fire dimmed, leaving only the ashes where Cheeky had stood. The cult's circle lay shattered. The walls of the mansion cracked, spilling red light like bleeding veins. Amara stood amid the ruin, her eyes glimmering with moonlight and unshed tears. Outside, the blood moon wept, its crimson light softening as spirits dispersed into the night. Amara knelt, whispering, "It is done." A gentle voice, deep and resonant, carried through the silence. "The living cannot chain the dead. Go, child, where the wind remembers your name." A faint smile curved her lips as she felt the burden of betrayal lift. Slowly, her body turned to mist, dissolving into the night. The moon shifted from red to silver, and Lagos exhaled as though awakening from a long, haunted sleep. Morning light crept over Lagos, timid and pale, brushing away the remnants of the blood moon. The mansion stood hollow, scarred by fire and echoes of screams long faded. Ashes of the fallen cult lay scattered across the floor, silent as forgotten prayers. Amara remained alone, her white dress glowing softly in the dawn, untouched by destruction. The city stirred around her, unaware that the war between the living and the dead had been fought in their midst. She walked into the streets, bare feet brushing against the dust of the waking city. Vendors shouted and laughed, children ran past, but none saw her. She had no reflection in mirrors, no shadow on the pavement. Only a stray dog, wise-eyed and low to the ground, followed her quietly. She passed the riverbank where children once played, the bridge where whispers of love had once been exchanged, and the empty streets felt both alive and hollow. In her silence, she carried peace and sorrow intertwined, a spirit suspended between two worlds, finally free yet forever remembering. Amara's journey ended beneath the canopy of ancient trees, where the shrine of Mama Ifeoma rested like a secret whispered through generations. The air was thick with the scent of earth, herbs, and incense, and the glint of cowrie shells caught the first light of dawn, sparkling like tiny stars fallen to the ground. Mama Ifeoma stood waiting, her eyes calm, as though the ancestors themselves had guided Amara home. "You have walked far, child," the priestess said softly, voice carrying the weight of years and wisdom. "But your feet no longer belong to the dust." Amara sank to her knees before the altar, bowing her head. Her spirit trembled under the heaviness of farewell, yet there was a strange peace in the air. Drums echoed faintly, though no hand had struck them, the rhythm of ancestors marking a final passage. Mama Ifeoma placed her wrinkled hand gently upon Amara's head. "You carried your pain with grace," she murmured. "Now let the earth remember your kindness, not your grief." She sprinkled sacred water that shimmered into soft light, surrounding Amara with a gentle glow. Outside, the stray dog sat silently, eyes wise, guarding this last moment among the living. Amara smiled faintly. "I am ready," she whispered, feeling the wind shift, stirring the shrine's candles though no breeze touched them. From afar, the steady beat of ancestral drums began anew, slow, eternal, resonant with the passage of souls. As the sun pierced through the trees, Amara's body dissolved into silver dust. Her dress fell away, her outline dissolving into the morning wind. the ashes swirled upward. Caught in a soft golden glow as Mama Ifeoma watched, tears tracing the lines of her face. From the dust, a single white butterfly emerged, delicate and radiant, circling the shrine once before fluttering toward the rising sun. "The spirit has found its way home," whispered the priestess. The stray dog barked once, reverent, then settled, guarding the memory of what had passed. The wind carried a soft echo, voices old as time, murmuring through the leaves. "The hands that spill innocent blood will never grasp peace." The city, waking below, felt an unseen tremor of truth ripple through its heart. Greed, pride, betrayal, all reduced to ash beneath the watchful eyes of ancestors. Even death itself seemed gentle, a mirror reflecting the weight of choices made by the living. From the shrine to the streets of Lagos, peace settled quietly, like dew on the morning grass. Those who once chased power felt unease, though they could not name it. Mama Ifeoma turned east, whispering, "Some souls return not for vengeance, but for closure." The white butterfly vanished into the sun's golden path, a symbol of forgiveness beyond time. The story did not end with revenge, but with balance restored. The ancestors watched silently, guardians of the fragile boundary between truth and forgetting.